As the globe continues to digitalize, artificial intelligence looms ever larger over our new world, but the transformation required remains a challenge. We're here at the annual gathering in Davos to collect insights and ideas from CEOs from around the world. Today I'm joined by Roy Cohen and Dr. Uri Yerushalmi from Fetcherr, a company that's developed a large market model, AI that takes intelligence to the next level, enabling real-time, informed and data-driven decision-making. Roy and Uri, great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
First of all, why don't you tell us a bit about Fetcherr and your unique technology?
Sure. Fetcherr is an Israeli company that was established in 2019. And the purpose of us opening the company is to see if we can create a new type of technology, and I might say AI, but AI is being used a lot, but a new type of foundational model called a large market model. The ability of this technology is to predict the future for business entities using market data. And by predicting this future, we are able to make business decisions in a very granular manner that enable organizations to make the right decision in areas of pricing, inventory management, and resource management on a day-to-day basis, and by that achieving the organization goal in the areas of profitability, market share, brand awareness, and such. And we were we've been running this for the last 6 years now with major airlines, and the results are quite successful to date.
And how are you different from other AI solutions on the market?
First thing that all of our pilots have been completely successful. We have converted 100% of our pilots to full commercialization. We've been able to connect a very advanced AI technology that is cloud-based to a very legacy tech stack in quite a seamless manner, meaning we've been able to connect AI-based decision-making in the core workflow of organization, that what other language models won't been able to. And our results, of course, are quite different from legacy systems or LLMs or language models. So the large market model generates, let's say, more than 7% increase in revenue when it's used in the pricing, decreases about 4 to 6 hours on a daily usage of an analyst, and makes the users' business lives much better and provides them the ability to work in a, let's say, well-explained environment.
And all of these pilots, it's important to note that they prove profitability. They add to the revenue uplift of the enterprise.
From an evolution technical perspective, if you like, what are the implications of this, Uri? Where does this go? How does this move as markets change?
Well, it's important to note that these systems are actually living systems, because every time something changes in the market, their worldview is updated. So they are always grounded to what's happening in the market now, and they are not relying on what happened historically in the market. And also, they evolve through simulation, because they always scan the landscape of possible decisions that can be made, and they run many what-if scenarios and choose the best policy, the best decision-making policy, and apply it on the market. And that puts the enterprise in a very different position, because with these simulations, the enterprise can make its decisions where they are proactive. So all of the decisions are proactively engineered rather than reactively adjusted. And there's a real-time loop in this system, because the system always forecasts what's going to happen next. Based on that, makes simulations. Based on the simulation, it chooses the best policy to be applied and applies it immediately. And that immediate reaction to the market puts the enterprise in a totally different space, where Unlike human decision making, that is very slow and usually is applied after the fact, these decisions are generating outcomes immediately, and they even allow the enterprise to move before the market moves. And that's very powerful for the enterprise. And it's only important to note that the way we see these systems, only systems that prove themselves as profitable would survive. And for surviving in such an environment, these systems need to be practical and optimize towards the goals of the enterprise. And in some way, these systems are behaving as brains of the enterprise, operational brains that covers all of the operational aspects of the enterprise, like inventory management, resource management, and pricing.
So Roy, can you give us an example of how this has worked?
Yes. So adding to practicality what Uri said, there is the famous case of DeepSeek that they claim that they are 1% of OpenAI cloud usage and GPU usage. To able to achieve what we are doing, and we crunch huge amounts of data, we have developed our models to be very small, but very powerful. So our cloud usage is 1% from DeepSeek. So we are able to run, and we know that the business decision making is how much this will cost me. So today, when we come to an organization, we don't provide just a model, because we understood that providing just a model will not work. We have created a complete cloud layer that is able to connect to any kind of legacy, archaic, outdated. We plugged into mainframes from the 50s and 60s. And the way that we do that, we created translators and transformers, because there is a data issue. All data don't speak with new AI models. So we start with the data, we normalize the organization's data, and we do it ourselves. Then it goes into model training. Then with every customer, we do A/B testing, because the proof is in the pudding, as they say. We want to showcase that to every customer that the technology works, we achieved what we have promised. And as I said, so far we have converted all of our customers from pilot to full commercial agreements in the last 6 years. And end result, our KPI, our want from the users is to how much less they are using our user interface. So a normal usage in a legacy system, it's all day long. A normal usage in Fetcherr's UI is 15 minutes a day, because the AI will run in the early AM. You come into work, everything is ready. Every analyst, they have their own portfolio of markets, of products that they manage. The AI will crunch every morning the entire landscape of the markets and will tell you if it's in pricing, if it's in inventory management, what to do. And every recommendation or every decision the AI wants you to make, it will explain why it came to that reasoning. So it will tell you, these were the reasons why I told you to increase the price for that fare base, for example.
That's an important point, because a layman's question is, decision making is always about reevaluating how the previous decision made before you move forwards. In other words, there's always a kind of a check over your shoulder. Can your market model do that? Can it, or will it lead itself down a blind alley because it makes decisions based on previous decisions, based on previous decisions?
And Uri will elaborate shortly, and that's a great question. That's why we use simulations. So every day we simulate what will happen. The next day we remember what happened yesterday, and we saw the effect of yesterday's recommendations. So first of all, the market will change every minute, every second. Okay, so the market from yesterday is not the market of today. You still have the business goal of making something, okay, increasing something. So while I will run the simulation, I have the baseline of yesterday, and I will simulate millions of times to see what will bring me closer to the end goal.
And that simulation forward is very important, because as the large market model projects forward what's going to happen, there are many scenarios that are going to happen, and it covers all of that probabilities of the different scenarios. So once you make a decision, the large market model is aware of what are the possible outcomes and what's the probability of each one of these outcomes. And as time progresses, it projects itself into the right point of the decision making. That's why the outcomes are so impressive, because it is always connected to the bottom line, to driving revenue.
So briefly then, do you have a real world example with one of your partners that you could share with us?
Yes, one of our Latin American partners, there was a Madonna pop-up show in Rio de Janeiro. So the AI, the large market model, understood that this will be, and this is a pop-up show. It's not an event in the event calendar that they have. You have on any company that you have event data. And pop-up shows are a very nice thing to see how this works. So it understood from the market data that something is going on in Rio de Janeiro, and it's decided to increase availability or inventory or increase prices to the route of Rio de Janeiro from anywhere in the hemisphere to that place. Now, without knowing who is Madonna, without knowing what is a pop-up show, just from understanding that there are more demand or more online searches, there are more news about this pop-up show, and that was a week before it happened. This is a great example how the engine knows how to predict before us human beings can understand that this will happen.
Uri, final thought then, what do you think is the direction of travel here? Where are we heading with this model of yours?
Well, we think that enterprises eventually will use AI in a totally different way that it is being used now. The whole concept of using AI as a co-pilot is going to evolve to using AI as an autopilot that covers all of the operational aspects of the enterprise, and that's much beyond just giving recommendations to humans. And we'll see more and more enterprises that are native in their behavioral sense, and that means that most of their day-to-day decisions would be covered by AI. And these decisions, as we mentioned before, are going to be very proactive decisions, and decisions that are directly connected to the bottom line. And for that, enterprises will need to have systems that are connected directly to the bottom line. These brains that we are talking about, operational brains. And these operational brains will sometimes make decisions that look somehow alien, because they are not trained on text. These are not language models that learned to mimic humans. These are models that actually learn the bottom line, the data itself. So sometimes their decisions are looking weird, but only after the fact you understand that they knew what's going to happen next. And as these brains cover more and more functions in the enterprise, it also gives them the ability to make the decision in a much more holistic way, because they know all of the functions of the enterprise, and that would have very significant outcomes, for example, when it comes to the organizational structure of enterprises, because current traditional organizational structures are derived from traditional human-based decision-making. And now when the decisions are so holistic, we need different organizational structures that are tighter and enable that cross-functional coordination. And it's also important to note that being the first mover here is going to be extremely important, because whoever gains access to these operational brains actually gets access to some irreversible advantages that would be very difficult for competitors to catch up.
An interesting future. Gentlemen, Roy, Uri, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Clearly, the next stage in AI's journey is not simply to support human decision-making, but to lead by making informed, autonomous choices at a scale and speed beyond human capability. For Fetcherr's clients, the benefits are tangible: increased revenue, deeper operational visibility, and a new level of efficiency.